Welcome to the Drawing Board. I'm your host and in-house artist, Erin Leffler. If you're not familiar with the Drawing Board, here's a quick recap of what happens on the show. Every episode of the Drawing Board, I invite a guest from the comics and entertainment industry, and we learn a little bit more about what they do. And while we're learning about what they do, I'm also drawing them. Pretty fun, right? Well, I'm super duper excited about my guest for this episode because he gave voice to some of my all-time favorite characters. You may be familiar with some of his work with Disney, with Studio Ghibli. There's so many cool things that he's done. And he's also done acting in person, not just studio voices. And he's also got his own little variety show right now that you might want to check out. Please welcome my guest, actor Jason Marsden. Hi there.
What's happened? I love your background is so... It's like a clean slate. Do you draw on the wall as well?
I used to when I was a little tyke. I drew on the wall. Got in trouble for that many a times growing up. So I learned.
Well, look where it's led you now. You have your own show, Mom.
Now I got my own show for it.
Well,
so for the kids who don't know, because I just said a mouthful of things, why don't you give us a little overview of what you do?
Well, I'm Jason Marsden. I'm an actor, like Erin said, and I've done things on TV. In the 90s, when everyone was, if you were too young to go out on a Friday night, you probably watched some TGIF, maybe some Step by Step or some Boy Meets World or Full House. And I did those. And then I was fortunate enough to also do voiceover, cartoons, animation, movies, apps, commercials, and cartoons like a Goofy movie, Spirited Away, and you know, All Hallows Eve is approaching. So all you children who don't go anywhere near that black flame candle, you understand?
Well, that is super duper amazing, and I know there's probably some people on this show right now watching that are like me and grew up with Boy Meets World and Goofy Movie and all those things, so this is super duper cool to get to hear from you today.
Yes.
So, for you, when did this start? Like, how early did you start acting? Was this something you knew you wanted to do right away, or did this happen, like, later on?
I started when I was 10 or 11. I'm originally from Rhode Island, Warwick, Rhode Island, Warwick, as they said down there, Warwick. And my dad was a dance teacher. He taught ballet, and he got an opportunity to teach ballet at Fullerton College, so we had to relocate to Fullerton, California. And while we were there, everyone's like, "Oh, your son is cute. You should get him into acting." And my parents went, "Cha-ching, what a great idea." And they sent me to a workshop, this place called Del Mar Media Arts, which is actually still, they've actually closed their brick and mortar. They are now online. So if anyone who's watching this is interested in getting into acting, I highly recommend Del Mar Media Arts, especially now that they're available worldwide. They trained me for 12 weeks.
Wow.
12 weeks of commercial and theatrical movies, comedy, sitcoms, and it was like me, and like it was all ages. It was, I remember the classes were like once a week, like 7 to 10, you know, and I'm with adults and like a couple of kids my age. And then after that, the folks Bud and Bunny Barth at Del Mar Media Arts, they sent me to an agent, and they signed me that very day, and then started submitting me immediately for movies, TV, commercials, and all that. And then I would say the rest is sort of like on the job training.
Oh, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a definite interesting way to get into it.
Yeah, indeed.
So
well, it wasn't. I mean, at the time, you're too young to realize this, but back like in early to mid '80s, there was like little to no diversity in television and movies like there is now. So I completely fit the mold. I was just dark hair instead of blonde. That's it. But you know, that's all they were looking for is little white dudes, and that's I was one of those.
Yeah, that's definitely true. A lot of people did have a similar look in the 80s and 90s, so
right.
I probably see that.
The bowl cuts, you know.
Yeah, those are some interesting haircuts back then.
Yes. The pre-mullet that was adopted into the late 80s, 90s. Yeah, I had one of those. Don't
great.
draw that though.
So you've done a bunch of different forms of acting. You've done voice acting, you've done screen acting. All those are super cool. You have your own variety show right now, and that's amazing.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what the difference between each of those is, because I know there is a lot of differences that come with each of those areas of acting, and if you had any challenges switching back and forth between those.
The difference is really, I mean, it's all acting. You're using the same tool, the same muscle. The difference between like on camera and voiceover is like on camera, you'd be wearing costume or wardrobe. You maybe go to an exotic location. With voiceover, you're in a booth. You can wear your pajamas if you want. You don't see the sun until 4 hours after your session's done. I never found it difficult to go back and forth. Like I said, it was all. I think a lot of people misconstrue that voiceover is not acting, or it's different than acting. It's still performing. You're still performing. It's just in a different environment. So I never had a problem with that.
Absolutely. And that's something I love getting you to touch on when I have somebody on here who's done voice acting, because I feel like there's so much like mystified stuff around it. Like people don't really know as much about voice acting as you do regular acting.
What's mystifying to you about voice acting?
No, I think just in general, when it comes to like anything that has to do with animation or voice acting, not as much light is given to that. And I think it's cool for kids to learn like different things about voice acting, about hours you have to put in, what goes into it. I think that's really cool to learn about.
Most kids don't know. I always ask, I do like a voiceover workshop every so often. I ask, what comes first, the voice acting or the animation? And a lot of kids say, the animation comes first, which, Aaron, is that true or false?
That is false.
False, that's right. They record the voice actors first, and then you talented artists like Aaron here will animate around the performance. Unless you're watching anime. If you're watching a lot of anime, that's already been done. That's already been produced in Japan, and then it comes over here, and then we will dub it for English language audiences.
Which is pretty impressive, because that can be a little challenging too.
That is very challenging. It's like, here, try this. You gotta video, kids at home, videotape yourself or a family member telling a story, and then watch it back, and then try to lip sync them while they're telling that story. You gotta, it's definitely a challenge, putting your energy into someone else's performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now for you, it sounds like you started out super duper young. You've been acting for quite a while in different forms of it. Was there anyone that either was a mentor to you or somebody that you really admired that kind of helped you in your acting career?
Everyone I worked with was an inspiration or a mentor. I mentioned Bud and Bunny Barth at Del Mar Media Arts. They believed in me. They saw something. They nurtured something in me. When I worked on the first TV series I ever did, was a revamp of a show called The Munsters, and it was called The Munsters Today, and I played Eddie, which was originally played by Butch Patrick, and the gentleman who played Grandpa on my version of the show, his name was Howard Morton, and he was like a real grandpa, and he was also very nurturing and I remember being like 12 years old, and he didn't care. He would tell me if I was good or not in the scene. He challenged me a whole bunch, so I always listened to that. Anyone, and especially in voiceover, I work with guys I used to listen to when I would watch Saturday morning cartoons, like Frank Welker and Michael Bell, and every chance you work with them, you're working with them, but you're also absorbing what they're doing. And my drive, every time I drive home, I'm always trying out some wacky sound or performance that they did to see how I can better my craft.
That's super cool, and I think it's really cool to be able to get to work with your heroes, because that's kind of like something that not everyone gets to do.
Yes, indeed. No, I've been blessed. I've worked with a lot of people who I admire.
Now, this is a question I love getting to ask, because whenever I go to Comic-Cons and guest at them, I get a lot of kids asking me this, because nowadays it seems that the only way to be good at what you do is to do your work 24/7 and not do anything else. So I love to talk to my guests about what hobbies we have, because it's so important, I feel, to have hobbies. So yes. Do you have any hobbies outside of doing voice acting and regular acting?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, and I was doing it right before I logged on here, but I've gotten into making artisan sourdough bread.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a fascinating bit of chemistry, and it's very gratifying. And now that I've gotten the hang of it, because you're dealing with a living organism, like you have to make a starter. I don't know if you're familiar with this. You have to make a starter, which is just flour and water. And then it sits there and you got to keep feeding it, and it'll grab the gluten in the air. There's gluten all around us, and it'll start to ferment and get a little sour. And then you use that instead of yeast to make the bread. And now you have to keep feeding this thing. And some restaurants have starters that are hundreds of years old, and I make the bread and I give it to my neighbors or anyone else who wants it. So that feels good. It's something it fills me up, and I get to fill other people's bellies at the same time.
That's super fun, and you're actually the first person who said anything about making bread, so that's really, really cool. I think that's awesome. I can't bake for the life of me. The only thing I can make is a pretzel, so I give you
make a pretzel
for that. Yeah.
With dough, like from scratch?
Yeah.
That's an undertaking. That's great.
That's the only thing I can cook. I got nothing else besides that, so I give everyone who can cook major props.
I draw a little bit as a hobby. I've always wanted, if I wasn't an actor, I probably would have pursued being an animator. I'm fascinated with animation and drawing, and it's not too late. I'd still like to go and take some classes for it, but I'd say that is what you do full time is a little bit of a hobby for me as well.
That's amazing. And again, another first, because nobody else I've talked to said anything about animation. So again, up my alley, where I'm feeling very good about hearing that.
Yay.
So this is a topic I love getting to discuss because I feel like this is something that kids could really use and hear nowadays. A lot of the times within the industry, rejection is such a big thing, whether it's trying out for roles or jobs. We get rejected a lot, and it's hard not to take it personal. Do you think that rejection is something that kids should be taking personal, or is it something that they can use as more of a learning experience for down the road?
Oh man, it's definitely a learning experience. Rejection is it's never about who you are on the inside. It's about what you're bringing to the table. It's about your skill set. Or it could be something that has nothing to do with you, especially as an actor. Like I've lost work because I'm short. I'm 5'1". And I didn't book this part to play the boyfriend because in real life, boyfriends aren't shorter than girlfriends or, your partners. It's like the most ridiculous things. And it's difficult not to take it personal. But here's what I do. If I get rejected, especially from something I really want, I allow myself to be sad about it. I allow myself to be angry about it. I'll scream and talk to a close friend or a loved one and tell them how, upset I am about it. And then I take a deep breath. And then I look forward to the next opportunity where I can compete and try again.
That's awesome. And the way that you just said that, I really like that too, because I think it's important that it's okay to feel what you're feeling about it and work through those feelings. That's 1,000%. People forget a lot, I feel.
Yeah. And don't let anyone, people should never tell you, get over it. Like your process is different from someone else's, and it might take you weeks to get over, years, and you have to honor, your vessel, what's going on inside of you,
Now, along with that, something that I feel is really big on that, especially with auditioning, is competition, because you're going up against so many people for roles and everything.
Yes.
Do you think that there should be a balance where there's healthy competition, or do you think that competition should be everything?
What do you mean?
Well, when you're going up against somebody for a role, should you be completely stone-faced against them and not be able to, be friendly with them and maybe learn from them? Or should you be more of like a healthy competition and see if you can improve if you go up against somebody?
That's a good question. I've definitely had auditions where I go in sort of stoic, not to intimidate, but I want to focus on the role or the part, the character, and I need to relieve myself of distractions. And I've gone in where I'm very friendly and open, especially if you see someone that I don't know. I've never been a fan of people who use those opportunities to intimidate and throw your game off. I think that's dirty pool. That's poor form. So especially what we do, we're creating entertainment. It should not be taken so seriously.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I love getting to talk about because it feels like with especially social media nowadays, that's something that's a spirit that's really bred. And I feel like there should be like a balance in between being able to be friendly with one another and also being able to push yourself to be better.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Thank you for encouraging that, because you're right. Because with all the social media, it's so easy to say something, intense or hurtful. If you can't see the other person react, I don't think we would do that. I don't think people would type such horrible things if you knew how hurtful they were to the other person. I'm glad you promote that.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important thing to talk about because I feel even like as adults we can still, learn from that because that's something that's hard to fight against, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask, because you have done acting in so many different forms,
Mm-hmm.
is there one that you prefer over the other?
Between voiceover and on camera?
Yeah.
I will fully admit that I have an ego, that I have a little bit of narcissism, that I am very self-aware of how fantastic I am, and I love that ego to be fed, and I love seeing myself on TV, on camera. Like I said, you get to put on the costumes a little bit. It's a little bit more fun and fantastic, but it's just as fun with voiceover. I still get the same sort of gratification. I mean, I really can't compare the two. They're both equally gratifying.
That is super cool. Now, I want to switch tune a little bit because along with your job, you also have a very fun facet, which is going to Comic-Cons. That's not something everyone I've interviewed has done. It's something that I know personally because I do it.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about that because going to a Comic-Con is a very different atmosphere. You're meeting people in person, getting to hear so many different stories and everything about how your work has affected them. What's it like going and having all these people come up to you talking about, the effect that your work has had on them?
Aaron, it's outstanding. It's so cool. It's so cool. Like, let's go back a couple of minutes ago. It said huge ego. Yes, it's people come up to you and tell you, I love the Goofy movie. It meant so much to me. I had such a tumultuous relationship with my father, but we bonded over this movie. Or I had cancer, or I got really sick, and I would binge watch Full House, and your character brought me so much joy. Like how could you not like that sort of feedback? And you don't get that feedback as a TV and film performer, because I do it and it's done and they show it, and I can't be in people's living rooms. So getting to be and meeting the folks it's outstanding. It's outstanding. I love it. I love it. You must love it too. People must come up to your table and be like, "You're so ridiculous, Aaron. You're so talented. Look what you're doing here."
I gotta admit, I'm more of like a nervous bug at Comic-Cons because I'm not sure what's going on. I'm like, I don't know whether I should be like, thank you, or if I should hide under the table right now. It's a weird
You have a hard time accepting gratitude? Yeah.
It's a little weird. But along with that, at Comic-Cons, a lot of times there's panels, and I'm sure that that's a different thing from acting on screen and acting in a voice booth. That's a live thing in front of people fielding questions and everything. What's that like? Do you ever find that you have a hard time doing that, or is that something that you enjoy?
At first, it was hard because, like you, and I it sounds contradictory about having an ego, but there is something. It's like, am I being too self-serving talking about myself? Is it conceit? Are people going to look at it this way? But then I quickly realized, no, that's why everyone's there. They want to hear you tell your stories. They want to hear from you. The first time I did a big panel, I got to go to Australia, which is just nutty to think, because, I do cartoon voices. I get flown to other countries. But I went to Australia, and then I had a panel for just me. And sometimes they have a moderator, like someone like yourself, who like fields questions. But in this instance, they welcomed me into a room. There was like 1,000 people. They gave me a microphone and said, "Hey, have fun for 45 minutes." I'm like, that's and I was definitely choking on my words a little bit. There was a fantastic gentleman in the audience who was a journalist who recognized the fear in my eyes and asked questions and stuff. But now it's like, throw me anywhere. I can, as long as people want to hear from me, as long as they're in the right room. but I love it. I don't mind at all.
That's super cool, and I think it's really neat too to hear like it's okay to be a little nervous, because I think a lot of times we kind of think like, oh, everyone that goes and does these things, they're professional, they have no nerves. We have nerves.
Nerves every time. I have nerves every time I do a con. I have nerves every time I do an audition. Every time I go to work, there's always the first few moment jitters that happen,
Absolutely.
and it's just excitement. That's all it is.
Yeah. Now, this is something I love also getting to talk about, because a lot of times on social media, we can kind of, you mentioned about having a little bit of an ego, which is okay at some points. You don't want to get down on yourself all the time. But how important do you think, after you've reached a certain level, is it to remain humble and to give back to people?
It's extremely important. There's a difference between, having an ego and being arrogant, about it. And with success, it's funny. When my son was growing up, when we watched movies and the villain, he's like, why is the villain like this? And it's usually my answer is like, greed, power. That's all they want. You have to be definitely being responsible with your success is a lot more rewarding, I feel. Yeah, don't be. You can still be successful, and you can still. You have to remember what got you there.
Yeah.
And be an inspiration to other people that want to get there as well. I think we need more. We need more humble and considerate and giving success stories for sure.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's such a good thing to talk about, because it's kind of hard to think that people are humble nowadays, especially with social media, that social media is like all up in your face, all about that person. So
yeah.
I
We're so quick to be insulted and take things personally.
Yeah.
Like we talked about earlier. I don't know why that's in our system as human beings. But I feel that's the big problem these days. I'm not into like litter and I remember commenting to this person who threw some litter on the trash. I was like, you threw that on the ground, and he got very, very upset and into my face, and the phrase that he said to me, which I've heard a few times, is, "Don't tell me what to do." Don't, nobody wants to be told what to do, but we live in, sometimes, it kind of helps. Otherwise we'd be running stop signs, and, getting on elevators before the doors open, if he could just take a moment and be like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I shouldn't disregard my community like this and throw this on the ground. Yeah, we all just need to take a breath, Erin.
Absolutely. Now, this is something I love getting to talk about, because we all have favorite memories from stuff that we've done over the years.
Yes.
I love pointing this out because it just proves that, you can use the good things to help you down the road and everything to look back on. Are there any memories, whether from acting on screen, doing voice acting, you name it, that just kind of like stick out in your mind as something that made you like go, wow, I really love what I do?
Okay, go back to the show, The Munsters Today. We shot for 2 seasons on the Universal Studios Hollywood backlot. And I was, 13 to 16 years old during this time. And this is before security was a big deal. And because I worked on the lot, I could go there anytime I wanted. So I happened to live across the street at the time. So I would go and I'd ride my bike. I'd wave hi to the security people. They let me in. They knew who I was. And my playground was the Universal Studios backlot. And I was present for when they were filming things like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Back to the Future 2, Dick Tracy. So many things to be able to run around a set and because of the Munsters, I wore makeup. So, because I had obviously it looked like I was working on a project that also gave me license to go everywhere I wanted. So I had access to all these things. And I think it just reminds me of how, I'm entrenched in this business. Yes, I am part of it, but I'm still, even to this day, I'm still in awe of what I do. I'm still in awe of my job and my field, because it's what brought me a lot of joy growing up, watching movies and TV, and then being part of it is pretty outstanding.
Absolutely, and that's amazing to get to be there when these classics are getting made. Like those things
Yes.
are now down in history, some of the best movies of all time, and get to be there while that's happening. It's just
Yes, yes,
wow.
yes. Yeah, if you watch the Back to the Future 2 in the future when they're doing the hoverboard chase, like if the camera like could tilt off like a few feet to the left, I'd be there. Like I was there almost every day. I couldn't get enough. It was fascinating watching them shoot it.
So this is something I love getting to ask because, everyone thinks once you've reached like a certain level in the industry, there's no going up from there. But we all kind of still have dreams and stuff that we'd like to do outside of what we've already done. So is there anyone that you still want to work with, anything that you still want to do in the field?
Oh, I mean, yeah, all of it. Everyone, all of it. It's such a uh, man. Julianne Moore is a favorite actor of mine. I'd love to work with her. I'd love to do more feature films. Really, I can't pick just one, Aaron. I mean, like there's so much to be able to have stability in this field is really the goal.
Absolutely, because it's definitely one that you bounce from job to job. So it's kind of like, where am I going next?
Exactly.
So I want to take a second because before we got on here, you mentioned something about your variety show, and I want to take a minute to talk about that because that sounds like something you're very passionate about. So tell us a little bit what it is.
I would be delighted to tell you about that, Aaron. I got my shirt, my Mars Variety Show shirt on. I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, not too long ago, and became completely enamored with the local music scene. And it wasn't just country like everyone thought. Like there's rock, there's hip hop, punk, soul, and some amazing performers, amazing talented people who would perform on stage for like 6 people, and they're pouring their guts out on stage, and it would infuriate me because I'm like, these people are amazing. How can you not, stop looking at your phone? Look what this person's doing. So I turned 40 years old, and I threw myself a variety show as a big 4-0 bash, and I invited musicians, I invited comedians, artists, because I was obsessed with these variety shows of the 60s and 70s, like Laugh-In, Hee Haw, the Dean Martin Show, and I put them all in this venue, and I was the host, I was the Dean Martin, and it was relentless. Like I didn't give people a chance to look at their phones. If something was happening on stage, that's done, lights out, stage, lights up, stage left. And then there's a comedy sketch over here. That's done. Lights out, sketch. Lights up over here. And someone's in the audience doing this. And I thought it was just a one-off thing people really loved. And they asked me to do it again and again and again. So I did it a lot live. And then, my background's TV. And I've been nurturing this idea as a TV show. And then COVID happened. And I thought, this is probably a good idea to maybe do it as a web series. I kind of figured out how to put it together. I just reached out to my musician friends. You can self-record yourself doing a song or telling a joke, or like yourself, I reach out to artists. Like, would you please time-lapse yourself drawing or painting? And I'll include that. And it's my way of celebrating the independent local artist, giving them a bigger platform to showcase their talents in a fun, sort of compact, clickable, deliverable way. And that's the Mars Variety Show, which you can see on YouTube right now.
My stars, that sounds so cool. Now, how's the reaction been to this so far? Because it sounds like it's a really fun show.
Thank you. The reaction has been great. There's one thumbs down on YouTube. Isn't that? Don't we always glom onto that one person? But we're up to almost 700 subscribers in the 6 weeks we've been on. The reactions have been absolutely positive. I've had some talent on there who I'm fans of, who I've never had a chance to connect with, but now as an excuse of doing the show, I was able to talk to them and got them excited to be part of it. And I'm already working on a second season.
Well, that's amazing. I can't wait to actually go check it out after this now, because now I'm excited to see it.
Please, please, please. And you must be a contributor. It's not just Nashville. It's everywhere.
I will say, though, the Nashville music scene is quite incredible, and I wish more people paid attention to it because it's just mind-blowing, the talent that comes out of that.
Indeed. It's more than just like the TV show Nashville that was on. Kind of scratched the surface a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they touch more on like the folk and the country, but man, there's a lot of great indie venues here that give a lot of support to people who think outside the box.
Absolutely. So, last couple questions for you
Yes.
before I show you what I was able to do over here while you were talking.
Are you doing a crossword? What is that you're doing there?
I don't know. So, is there anything that you wish when you first started out that you knew that maybe would have helped you along the way?
Yeah, I wish someone had told me not to be so arrogant. I will admit I was that guy in my 20s. I had a lot of success early on, and I didn't have a lot of people in my network who I think people understood me, but maybe not enough to be like, hey, you should really take a look at yourself and how you're reacting and how you're talking to people. I think I would love to have done that again with that and glossed over that part of my career, learned from that a little quicker.
That's a great thing to learn too, I think, especially early on, because it would probably make it easier down the road, especially
Yeah,
so that way you don't get anyone upset at you.
exactly.
So, last question for you, and this one's my absolute favorite. If there's a kid watching this right now, young adult or even adult, who wants to get into the industry, whether doing voiceovers, whether doing screen acting, you name it, what is the one thing that you would like them to walk away from watching this knowing?
I'd like you to know that you could do anything. You can do anything you want. If you want to be a performer, uh, you know, it's all about taking some acting classes, going to karaoke, doing a play with your friends, making your own YouTube channel. I mean, there's more opportunities for this than ever. Uh, think about what makes you unique. Try not to. I mean, we all want to kind of emulate the people we admire, but there's lots of people who imitate Jim Carrey or so and so. And what's going to make you unique? And make sure when you're performing, you're doing it to please yourself. Don't try not to worry about what other people say. Be able to take direction, but don't let it change who you are.
Absolutely. That's a great piece of advice, and thank you so much for sharing that. I can't wait for everyone to learn from this. And now I get to do my favorite thing, which is show you what I was doing. I'm going to warn you ahead of time, the computer does sometimes mess with the color a little bit. So I will send you the actual copy so you can see it properly, but I'm going to try to get this up in here.
Holy heck. Look, you made me handsome. How'd you do that? Wow.
I don't know how it happened. It just showed up.
Oh my gosh. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much to everyone who tuned into this episode. Again, I'm your host and in-house artist, Erin Leffler. Catch you next time on the drawing board. I kind of have to use my hands as like the clicker to point out where I'm done.
Of course. Of course.
Well, thank you so much.
Look, and just in time a train's going by too.
Ah!